scripture reading is in your bulletin.
Mark 16, 1 through 8. Now, if you go home and you read this passage later, you'll find that in Mark's gospel there are three different endings. This one, another couple of verses, which is called the short ending. Then you'll find another one, which is called the long ending, which goes for another 10 verses or so after that. Most scholars believe that this is how Mark's gospel actually ended, at just verse 8, and the other verses were added later because they thought the ending was inadequate. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb. And they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. And as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in white, in a white robe, sitting on the right side. And they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus, the Nazarene, who was crucified. He is risen. He's not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee, and there you will see him just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. When you came here this morning, you had some expectations. You were expecting Easter lilies. Check. We have Easter lilies. You were expecting a choir. Check. You had choir, sang a nice resurrection song for us. You were expecting to hear the traditional Easter greeting, "Christ is risen." And you heard that. Check. So you got that. And you heard some wonderful resurrection hymns. You were expecting to hear "Christ the Lord is risen today." Hallelujah. Check. You heard that as well. And you were expecting to hear the Easter story with Jesus appearing to Mary, or appearing to the disciples in the upper room, or to the disciples on the walk to Emmaus, or to Peter, or something, right? What happened? Why in Mark's gospel do we not find that in the story? Well, the women who came to the tomb on that morning, they came with expectations too, just like we come with expectations. They were familiar with death. This was not their first rodeo. This was not the first time that they had prepared a body for death. And so they were coming and expecting to find a tomb with the stone in front of it. They were expecting that when they finally got into the tomb that they would find a corpse, that they would find the body of Jesus. It would all be beat up. They were coming with spices and water and washcloths, hoping, expecting that they would be able to cleanse the body, to finish the process for the burial, which had to be hurried because of the Sabbath and the Good Friday. Those were their expectations. They had very concrete expectations, as this is what we need to do. They were wondering, do we have enough spices to cover up the odor of decay? Do we have enough water? Do we have enough washcloths to do what we need to do? And of course, their biggest concern was, how are we going to move the stone? It's so heavy. Who are we going to be able to find to help us to roll away the stone so that we can do what we expected to do? I can identify with those women. I'm experienced with death and with funerals. Our son Todd died 2 years ago. Big fan of the North Carolina Tar Heels. He would be giving me so much grief because I don't have one team left in my bracket. And he'd be letting me know that the Tar Heels are going to win it all. And so that's what we would be talking about. Linda's dad served as a mentor for me. We had lots of conversations. Frequently, whenever I had a ministerial issue, I would seek out Bob's advice. My parents buried my father 2 years ago. I can't tell you how many times when I just want to be able to talk to him on the phone, be able to talk to my mother again, tell them what their grandkids are doing, solicit their advice for some of the things that we're having to deal with. And I know what those women were feeling, what they're thinking, what their frustration was. I have a book. It's called My Pastoral Record. It has, actually I have two of these because the section that's for funerals, my first book, I filled it up. So this is my second pastoral journey book. And it has the list of all the funerals that I've done. Well over 700. I've reached the age where I have more friends in heaven than I have on earth. And every once in a while, I'll go back through and I will read these names because I don't want to forget them. And almost all of them, when I read their name, I see them in my mind's eye because they were my friends. I'm familiar with funerals. I'm familiar with death. I'm familiar with all of the questions, the concrete things that we want to know. Burial or cremation? Which funeral home do we want to call? If we go with the burial, what do we want them to be wearing? What do we do with their stuff? Are we going to do an auction? Are we going to do an estate sale? Or are we going to just give it away? What do I write in the obituary? And then perhaps the most concrete or granite or marble of all the questions is the grave marker. What do I want for their tombstone? I am well equipped to help you with these very concrete questions when death comes to your door. Those women came with expectations. They came expecting a tomb. They came expecting a corpse. You came here today expecting Easter lilies, a resurrection story, and good news. Well, you're going to get it. You are going to get it. So what did the women find when they came? The unexpected. They came and the stone was rolled away. That was their main concern. How are we going to get into the tomb to take care of the stuff that we want to do? The stone was rolled away. And if I would have been with those women on that particular day, I think I would have said, maybe we need to think about this for a little bit. The people who wanted Jesus put to death, they might be still hanging around. Maybe they want to do something to us. I don't know if the women hesitated or not, but what we do know is they went into the tomb either timidly or boldly, and they went into the tomb, and there they found somebody. They found this guy, a young man in a white robe, sitting at the right side. Now, you're going into the tomb, you're expecting to find a corpse. You're not expecting to find an angel. And this angel, this guy, he says to them, don't be alarmed. That's how we know he's an angel, because what do angels always say? Too late. Yeah, don't be afraid, fear not. I don't know what happened to the spices and the water and the washcloths, but I think it's what happens to popcorn in a scary movie. I think their stuff that they brought was scattered all over the inside of the tomb as they were terrified as to what it was that they were seeing. And this angel says, don't be afraid. Well, that always comes too late. And so then he says to these women, these three women, he says, you're looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. Now, if one of those women would have been a wisecracker, she would have gone, well, duh. I mean, of course, that's what we were expecting. We came here to fix the dead body of Jesus. We wanted to finish the burial process, the funeral process that we weren't able to do. And then this angel, he goes on and he says to them, he's risen. He's not here. See the place where they laid him. Now, I suspect that that is the first time that the disciples realize, or what the women realize, is not there. I think the whole time what they were focusing on was what was there that they weren't expecting. Who expects to find a living person in a tomb? And what's more is he was expecting them. This angel was expecting them. He was waiting for them. And it rolled back the tomb for them. And so I think it's at this point when this angel says to them, he's not here, he's risen, see the place where they laid him, that they finally realized what's missing. There's no smell. There's no body. The space where Jesus had been laid out by Joseph of Arimathea, it was empty. And so I think this is where we think that there should be a happy ending in Mark's story. This is where the women should start doing cartwheels. And they should start saying, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. He said he was going to be risen from the dead. I knew it, he's going to be here. This is where you expect Jesus is going to appear to them in the garden tomb area. Or that he's going to be ahead of them and he's going to show up in the upper room to Peter and John and everybody else. This is where you expect him to meet somebody. But there's no cartwheels in Mark's story. There's no shouting for joy. There is nothing but absolute terror. These women are scared spitless. All they want to do is to get out of that tomb and start screaming hysterically because they're so frightened. And then the angel says to them, but go. Well, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to go. But he gives them a commission. He's changing their job description. You came with washcloths and with water to wash the body. There's no need for you to wash the body because there's no body here. You came with spices to finish the anointing process. There's no body here. There's no need for your spices, but I have a job for you. Your job is to go. You are to go and you are to tell the disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see him just as he told you. Well, now, what do you expect the women to do? You expect them to run out of there and to go tell Peter and the other disciples that Jesus is risen. But they said nothing because they were terrified. There's no cartwheels here. There's no jumping up and down for joy. There's no, where's Peter? Where's the upper room? Where can we tell people this wonderful news that we have heard? These women, they had seen the miracles that Jesus had performed. They'd seen him give sight to the blind, deaf to hearing, cast out demons. They had heard Jesus say that he was going to be betrayed and crucified and rise from the dead. But they saw him die. They saw that horrible death of crucifixion. They saw him laid in the tomb. They heard that stone and saw that stone being rolled over the opening of the tomb. They couldn't believe in a resurrection. People just don't come back from something like that. And what are they supposed to say anyway? They haven't seen Jesus. The only evidence they have is an angel in an empty tomb. What are they supposed to say? Well, the angel's commission, it begs a couple of questions that we need to look at. The first question is he says, go and tell his disciples and Peter. So the first question is okay, if they're supposed to go and tell the disciples, where are they? Because they're not here. They're not at the tomb. They're not anticipating Jesus rising from the dead. They're in hiding. They're terrified. And they're given instructions, especially go and tell Peter. And the reason why they need to tell Peter especially is because Peter's not just in hiding because of fear. He's in hiding because of shame. At the Last Supper, when Jesus, said that somebody's going to betray me and I'm going to be killed and you're all going to be scattered and you're going to run away, Peter was the one who boldly said, I will never run away, that I will follow you to prison and even into death. And Jesus said to him, Peter, before this night's over, you're going to betray me how many times? Before the cock crows, twice, 2 times. And that's exactly what happened. Peter did deny Jesus 3 times. The rooster did crow the 2nd time. Jesus did get arrested. He did get betrayed. He did get carried off to be crucified, and Peter ran away and hid. So did all of the other disciples. And so they need to hear the message that these women are supposed to find him. Where are they? Secondly, why Galilee? Why does Mark say, go to Galilee, and he will be ahead of you, and there you will see him just as he told you? Does that not confuse anybody else but me? Why didn't he say, go to the upper room, because I'm going to appear to you in the upper room? Or go to the garden, because I'll see you in the garden. Or walk on the road to Emmaus, because I'll see you on the road to Emmaus. He doesn't say any of that. The angel says, go to Galilee. Well, the reason why he's hinting as to why they need to go to Galilee is because it was at Galilee that the disciples first met Jesus. It was at Galilee that Jesus called them to become disciples. It was in Galilee where Jesus first told them that he was going to be crucified and died and he was going to rise again from the dead. What Galilee represents is all things become new. That it is a new beginning, that it is a new relationship. You see, Jesus isn't being resuscitated from the dead. He's being resurrected from the dead. It's a completely new start. It's a complete do-over. Their concept of the resurrection in Jesus' day was more like zombies, that you reanimate something that's dead. And that's not what Jesus is talking about. It's a resurrection. It's new life. It's a new start. It's a completely new thing, and that's what Galilee represents for them. It's a chance to go back and to begin again and to do it again. So he says, go to Galilee, and there you will see him just as he told you. This past Friday, some of us watched the movie The Passion of the Christ again. The key scene in the movie, at least for me, is Jesus is carrying his cross, and Mary, his mother, wants to see him. And so John, the beloved disciple, takes Mary on a back road to where an intersection where they will see Jesus passing by. And Mary knows that he's coming, and John's telling her that he's coming, mother. He's coming. And she can't look because of the horrible things that are happening to her son. And as Jesus comes into the intersection, he falls for the 3rd time. And Mary has this flashback in the movie, great movie, where she sees Jesus as a little boy falling down. Remember the scene, for those of you who saw the movie? And she starts running towards Jesus as she ran to Jesus when he was a little boy. And she says, I'm here, I'm here. And then when she reaches him, Jesus says to her, see, mother, I'm making all things new. That's the point. Jesus died and rose again because he's making all things new. We are broken and fallen. He's making us new people. We're sinners. He's forgiven us. He's making us new people. There is no sin, there's no mistake, there's nothing that we could ever do that Jesus isn't the Mr. Clean magic eraser and erases it and makes us a new people. See, mother, I'm making all things new. That's what it means to go back to Galilee. Third question, though, has to do with Mark's abrupt ending. What is this? Why does Mark not have a resurrection appearance for us. Now, if you're reading Mark for the very first time in those days, 50 A.D., in those days when books were written, books got published by being recited because they didn't have printing presses. And so what was happening with Mark's gospel is there were people going around who had memorized the book of Mark and they were reciting it and they would tell the story. And there were a few people who actually had access to the scrolls to be able to read it. And so when you hear the story of Mark for the first time, what catches you is it's like a typical action story biography of that era. And it's a very fast-moving story where you see all and hear all these wonderful things that Jesus is doing. And then when Jesus gets to Jerusalem, the pace of the story picks up even more. And then all of a sudden, Jesus gets betrayed and he gets arrested. And it's at this point, all the other stories like this have a Rambo-type ending. Have you watched Rambo movies? Rambo always gets the crap beat out of him. And then at the climatic moment, all of a sudden he throws off his chains, he beats up his assailants and goes after Murdoch, the bad guy, and says something horrible to him, and then the guy dies a horrible death. That's what people are expecting is going to happen with Jesus, that he's going to throw off the chains, that he's going to beat up the Roman generals and soldiers who have him, that he's going to go after Caiaphas, and then he's going to start a revolution, and Israel's going to be on top, because that's how the story's supposed to end. But it doesn't. The last thing we read in Mark's gospel, the last time we see Jesus, they're carrying him into a tomb. He dies. Horrible death on a cross. And you're thinking, what? What is this? This isn't the way the story's supposed to end. Throughout the whole Markan story, you have this messianic secret, is what scholars call it, where every time Jesus does something that shows the sign of the kingdom of God, casting out demons, healing the blind, doing some miraculous thing, he always tells the people, don't tell anybody. And what do? They tell everybody. Now you get to this point of the story, and the angel says, tell everybody. Go tell Peter, go tell John, go tell the disciples that he's risen. And what do? Nothing. They don't tell anybody. And so if you're hearing this story, you're going, what in the world is going on? Why in the world is Mark telling such a terrible story? But what do we know? We know that they told somebody. Otherwise, the story would have never gotten written. It never would have gotten told. Somebody told the story. Sometime, somewhere, those women went and found Peter. They went and found the disciples. And they told them, he wasn't there. We went to the tomb and he was gone. And an angel was there, and the angel told us that he was risen from the dead. And then the reports start filtering in. We saw him in the garden. We saw him on the road to Emmaus. We saw him in the upper room. Because Jesus was risen. What broke the silence? The unexpected. The unexpected tomb. The unexpected angel. The unexpected message. The reason why Mark finishes the story the way he does, and it really finishes, in the Greek, it really finishes weird, because it stops with a preposition. It says, was that on the other clicker, the other side? Maybe it's on my next slide. Nope. The one before, where it just simply says that they were afraid. And for. It ends with the word for, which makes absolutely no sense. The point of that is because it's supposed to become our story. That's why Mark ends the gospel the way he does. It's to become our story, our resurrection, our new life, our forgiveness of sins. What will break my silence? What will break your silence? The unexpected. I can be forgiven of my sins. I can be a better person today than I was yesterday. I can be a better person tomorrow than I am today. That I can see my son Todd again. That I'll see Bob again. that I'll see Bill and Margie again. I'll see Wayne Austin again. Letha Roper. Rogene Russell. Janice Albertson. Chuck Jones. Alan Fretz. You see, running in terror eventually is going to be turned into running with joy because he's risen. He's risen. Let us pray.